When I made my first video about 13 Ghosts on TikTok, I had no idea it was going to get the reception it did. And what was really amazing about this is it showed me that there are so many people like me who really love this movie, even though it is a very flawed film. A lot of people, when they see this film, they maybe see errors in casting, or some moments with bad writing, or other issues that pop up along. But fans of this film see through all of that, and we see that at the core of it, there's something really amazing deep down. And even with all of its flaws, I still come back and watch it every few years. And it just made me so excited that people love this movie as much as I do. And that they find the Ghost's backstory so interesting, because that was the part that always drew me back to the movie. That, and because I love Matthew Lillard in that film. And in that series, I went over the ghosts and their backstories along with their astrology, according to the Dark Zodiac. But a comment that I kept getting over and over, and it's something I've wondered a lot myself, was Dennis actually the 13th ghost? So in this video, we're going to look over what it means to be the 13th ghost, what are the criteria, and then I'm going to look at evidence that supports and goes against the fact that Dennis could be the 13th ghost. So in one scene, we see Dennis, Arthur, Kalina, and Maggie all trapped in a room together. That's when Kalina pulls out the book and she starts going over all of the ghosts and their archetypes. And she explains that that's just exactly what these are, they're archetypes, so that's why the different ghosts can fit into this. There are multiple ghosts around the world all throughout time who could have fit as the different archetypes. While Kalina talks about this, Dennis brings up, what about a 13th ghost? That he had heard about a 13th. And then Kalina says that that's a myth, and that basically the 13th ghost is someone who sacrifices themselves willingly for love, and that's what would stop the Basilius machine from even working, which would stop Cyrus from getting his powers. She says that this ghost has to sacrifice themselves out of an act of love. And then Dennis looks at Arthur and he says, "You're the 13th ghost." Now it's assumed for the remainder of the film that Arthur is and could be the 13th ghost. But realistically, we know that Kalina is working for Cyrus and that Kalina is lying. So right then, Kalina is putting that idea into Arthur's head so that he will sacrifice himself, which will make him into the 13th ghost, because you can't really force someone to sacrifice themselves. But everything goes awry, he ends up seeing Cyrus, and the jig is up. And at that point, Cyrus can't kill him because he needs him to sacrifice himself. So then, instead of getting him to jump willingly onto the platform to sacrifice himself, he puts his children there and is forcing him to jump to save his children, which will then cause him to sacrifice himself. So I guess I was wrong. You can force someone to sacrifice themselves. So the reason that I bring up that Kalina had lied and that she's working with Cyrus and that she's unreliable is because most of the time when you have someone who's giving you propaganda or someone who's spreading misinformation, they mix truth with lies, because then it's easier for you to believe the lie. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. So we know after all of this goes down, Dennis is killed by the Juggernaut. Maggie is able to mess with the Basilius machine so that it messes up the flow of the blade so that Arthur can jump in and be with his kids. And then because Maggie had messed with this whole system, it then blows up. That breaks the curse of the ghost. And then they go throw Cyrus into the machine, which then explodes. So there's some things that we don't know here, and so we'll have to fill them in to a certain extent. We don't know exactly how the machine functioned properly because Maggie interfered with it before the ritual is complete. I do think, though, ultimately, the 13th ghost has to be sacrificed on that platform where the children were, the one that Arthur jumps to. And the reason that I think that is because they try to trick him originally with Kalina to send him to the platform. That doesn't work. So at the scene where Cyrus confronts him and holds his little cane sword to his neck, he tells him that he has to go jump to the platform. So I think that this platform plays a pivotal role, and so if the 13th ghost does not get created there, I don't think that person can be the 13th ghost. I think that's why there was so much importance of this platform. Otherwise, Cyrus would have just stabbed him there or let him die earlier on in the movie. Now, looking at if Dennis then is the 13th ghost, let's look at the reasons that he could be the 13th ghost first. So one of the first things is they say that the 13th ghost is the ghost with the broken heart. And while this does describe Arthur because of losing his wife, again, these are just archetypes, so many people could fit in them for multiple reasons. Dennis also was someone with a broken heart. We see early in the film that he's completely torn about what he's doing with Cyrus. He's starting to see that it is wrong. And when he comes to the house to stop Arthur and his family from even going inside, and tries to get them all out before this whole thing even starts, he was doing that just to, in a small way, try to redeem himself for the horrible things that he had done to help Cyrus. And then the other thing that we know, and this ties into that other point, is that the 13th ghost has to sacrifice themselves for love. Dennis says as he's sacrificing himself that he's wanting to feel good about himself for a really long time. That's where he steps out, faces the ghosts, and is killed right in front of Arthur. And this is another moment where he then again fits the archetype of the 13th ghost because he sacrificed himself for love. And this again is where the archetype gets a little bit messy, because when you hear that it's a ghost that sacrifices himself for love, you think about it in the sense of, oh, Arthur's sacrificing himself because he loves his children. But Dennis's character, he's sacrificing himself to keep this family alive and together because they love each other. So technically he also sacrificed himself for love. So right there, you could argue that Dennis is the 13th ghost. But I think that there's one major problem that throws off this entire thing. The 13th ghost isn't just created from a broken heart and because they sacrificed themselves for love. They also explicitly say multiple times that the 13th ghost has to be created on this platform during the ceremony. And since Dennis was killed minutes before, I don't think he can be the 13th ghost. Without this platform aspect, I think it really throws a huge wrench in Dennis being the 13th ghost, unfortunately. And one other reason that I do not believe that Dennis is the 13th ghost is because all of the other ghosts that we see, when the chant is started up, when the machine is activated, they're all called to the machine. Some of them are instantly pulled away, others walk towards the machine, and we see that they don't all leave at the same time. But we see that the ghosts don't get called back in order. First, we see the angry princess disappear and be called away by the machine. Then the juggernaut walks away, heading towards the machine. But then we see Arthur's wife has time to come talk to him before she is then pulled away. So the reason that I bring this up is because maybe Dennis was the 13th ghost if the platform didn't matter and he hadn't been pulled away yet. But we do see that all the other ghosts are pulled away and he is seemingly unaffected in his ghost form by the machine. But I want to say there's one way that I think Dennis actually could be the 13th ghost. When Kalina originally talked about the 13th ghost was a myth and that it was a failsafe, we know that Cyrus did not himself write these works. These works were written by another man who was in contact with the devil and was able to create this machine on paper. Cyrus is just trying to put it together. So when Kalina says that the 13th ghost part is a myth, and it seems as though she's trying to lie to get Arthur to go down a rabbit hole, this could all be a misunderstanding by Cyrus and Kalina when they're reading over the book. Maybe the 13th ghost really was a failsafe to stop the entire thing. And maybe that 13th ghost did not have to die on that platform. If that were the case, that maybe Dennis is the 13th ghost. And maybe when the 13th ghost is created, it's not an instant fail-safe like we might think to where the machine instantly stops working or that Cyrus is defeated. Maybe it just stops whatever magical protection was around this machine so that Maggie's character was able to go and mess with it so that they could stop the whole process. But I guess in my personal opinion, I don't think Dennis was the 13th ghost. The 13th ghost was never created because Arthur never died. And that would go along with the plot as we discussed. But I do love that idea of him being the 13th ghost. And sometimes in my head, I like to pretend the fan theory is real. And I think I'm gonna kind of do that with this one. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed to me on TikTok, I would love if you check that out. I also have an Instagram. On my Patreon each month, I'm releasing a video just like this one where I do a deep dive, and that's only accessible to my Patreon subscribers for that first month. My Patreon subscriber, Michael Hartson, thank you so much for the support. And thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.